Good afternoon.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for joining us this afternoon for this rather unusual special meeting. And I trust you've all had a moment to both admire the beautiful First Nations art and our land acknowledgement. Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order and ask for a motion to approve the agenda. And Councillor Lambert is joining us on WebEx. Thanks for joining us, Councillor Lambert. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Seconded by Councillor Watt. All in favor? Contrary carried. So we are gathered on Monday to consider a letter we received from the Minister of Housing, and I'd just like to begin by playing a excerpt. I was interviewed by CBC on Friday, and they started the interview with a quote from the minister. So I think out of courtesy, because he's not here today, I'd ask if our corporate officer could play the quote.
Municipality in BC has adopted the province's legislation around small-scale multi-unit housing, according to the provincial government. And that community is West Vancouver. So on Thursday, the Ministry of Housing issued a 30-day deadline to comply, or else the province will have to step in. Here is BC's Minister of Housing, Rabi Kahlon.
We don't want to have to do that. We want to make sure that they're doing the job that they're elected to do, aligned with all other communities in the province. And, nothing is more frustrating for other mayors in the region than to see one community not doing their part while everybody else is doing their part. And so this is about everyone doing a little so that one community doesn't have to do a lot.
So that was BC's Minister of Housing, Rabi Kahlon.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. I must admit, I take real exception to the suggestion that we are not doing our part. And I would encourage everyone, if they have a moment, to listen to all of my remarks on this subject, because I think the local councils are elected to listen to the public, to have public hearings, and to guide the planning thoughtfully. And we may have disagreements from time to time, but I think over the years it has really worked quite effectively. To get an issue on the floor, I'll turn it over to Councillor Snyder, who wishes to make a motion.
I think Councillor Lambert was...
Or Councillor Lambert?
I could do that to introduce the motion, item 3. Hello?
Thank you. Councillor Lambert, would you be kind enough to do that?
Yes, you can hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, so recommend that the proposed zoning bylaw number 4662-2010, amendment bylaw number 5351-2024 be considered for first, second, and third readings and adoption at the August 19th, 2024 special council meeting scheduled for 3 p.m. in the Municipal Hall Council Chamber and via electronic communications facilities, WebEx video conferencing software, and that notice be given of the scheduled consideration.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Snyder?
Just have a couple of comments on it.
Certainly. I think there is a presentation, but I think Councillor Snyder is the seconder. We'll just let him make a remark and then we'll go to the presentation. Thank you.
I actually didn't see that there was a presentation on the agenda.
Do you want to see the presentation first then?
Through the Mayor, staff do have a presentation prepared to provide a brief summary of the amendment bylaw that we've brought forward in response to the ministerial order. notice rather, and compares it to the previous bylaw that council considered in May. We're happy to waive the presentation and answer questions at council's.
I think we'd like the presentation, but I just would like to make a couple of comments because I do find myself a little bit conflicted in seconding this this proposed bylaw. And fundamentally, I do completely agree. I disagree with the provincial government's approach in dictating that locally elected officials, and how they go about the planning of their communities. So, the bill basically paints every municipality in the province with the same brush. It doesn't take into consideration the individual or the independent issues that each of the municipalities each have. We all have our own specific restraints and limitations, and West Vancouver is no exception to that. We have the water on one side, the mountain on the other side. We have limited access to basically exiting the municipality through limited bridges, and of course we are also the transition point for people that are trying to access Burnaby, the rest of the lower mainland through Vancouver when you're coming from Whistler, Squamish, Sunshine Coast, and what have you. So I find it, fundamentally, I just have a difficult time accepting that the provincial government can mandate and paint every single municipality with that same brush. On the other hand, I also don't want to, take into consideration the unknown risks and the consequences that West Vancouver may experience if we leave this in the hands of the provincial government. Handing over the authority, should we not approve this moving forward, we don't know exactly where that's going to end us up. And, myself personally, I'm not comfortable handing over the authority to those that really don't understand our municipality and our community. And I think that has significant risks for us moving forward, and I'm not prepared to assume those risks. Just sort of further to Mayor Sager's comments, to suggest that West Vancouver isn't doing its part in providing housing, I find that a ridiculous allegation. Over the last year, maybe the last 18 months, we've approved many small-scale multi-unit housing developments, including a partially constructed Kiwanis development, 22nd and Gordon Street, the 3,700 unit project up Cypress Mountain that was recently approved, another 36 unit approved development in Daffodil and Eagle Harbor area, another 6 unit approved area up in the Glenmore area. The 206 unit development that was approved for the small scale units, the corner of Clyde and Taylor Way, Mayor Sager addressed, where the applicant has withdrawn and basically abandoned that application. So I do take issue with the comment that we're not doing our part to add to small scale multi-unit housing in West Vancouver. And the other issue that we face here is we're not in a position to demand those people that are making the proposed developments fulfill their applications. We own very little land here. The district at least owns little land where we have access to improve the actual multi-level developments that are being asked upon us. And we're not in a position to be able to force the private sector to spend money, especially in these challenging times that everybody faced, the cost of building and developing and moving forward. So I think we're restricted in those resources. And those are the only comments I'm going to make at this point.
Thank you. And Councillor Cassidy.
So I'm not actually speaking to what we're going to be discussing this afternoon. What I would like to say is that I'm not going to be available on the 19th of August. I let you know that last week, and I want to be here for this vote. I did say that I would make myself available by Zoom on the 28th and the 29th of August. Other than that, I'm in a region of the world that technology has not as yet arrived. So I do not want this meeting on the 19th of August. I want to be present. It is an exceedingly important decision to be made, and I want my independent voice to be heard accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cassidy. Councillor Watt.
Yeah, and like Councillor Cassidy, I will also be away at that time. And I can't guarantee that I will also be able to Zoom in. I would hope to, but I would prefer to put a friendly amendment forward to change the date of that subsequent meeting.
Thank you. Ms. Dallas, I think the date was set because that was the only option before the ministerial letter expired. But I'm certainly flexible and agree. I would like all members of council to be present and available.
We are required to provide 2 weeks' notice. So we had intended on putting the notice in the August 7th and 14th editions of the North Shore News and holding the meeting on the 19th to ensure that the public notice requirement is satisfied. We can certainly hold it on a different date, but I'm not sure we have enough time to get the notice in for this next edition, which would be on the 31st. I'd have to confirm with Legislative Services staff. So we can certainly change the date, but we have a bit of a tight window in that the deadline to comply is August 24.
I find this really extraordinary because the province will not permit any public input into this particular bylaw. So how is that even remotely proper, in my view? Councillor Cassidy?
Career advertising in the North Shore News, publication does not go out and finalization does not go out until sometime probably on Tuesday. So I say if you make a call between now and 5 o'clock, we can change the date.
I can look into that.
So that would move it up. You're okay?
No, we either move it up, which would be before the 13th when I leave, or we make it the 28th or the 29th.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I'm away on the 28th and 29th, and I definitely want to participate as well. So, not according to the minister. Councillor Gambioli?
Maybe while Ms. Dallas works some magic, we could hear the presentation so that the public and the media understand what we're even talking about.
Thank you. Ms. McGuire?
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council members of the public. I'm here with Winnie Yip, Senior Community Planner. She has a short presentation. And as I said, we've focused generally on just summarizing the amendment bylaw that we've brought forward for setting the date. And then done a comparison of the previous bylaw that Council considered in May, just for Council and the public to understand the changes that the Minister has indicated that they want Council to make. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Yip.
Thank you, Ms. Yip.
Thank you. We're just going to set it up quickly. Is it visible?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Me. There we go.
Thank you. Mayor and Council, thank you for your time today. As Michelle had said, we'll just provide a quick, brief context as well as background and analysis of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment changes for SMU in accordance to the provincial notice. So a very quick history. The province amended the Local Government Act through Bill 44 to require SMU zoning changes by June 30th of this year. The SAC then subsequently proposed amendment bylaw number 5327, which was considered by Council and defeated on May 27th. And we received the ministerial notice as provided by the legislation that the minister has powers to issue last Thursday on July 25th. And the minister then states that his objections to the district's incompliance to SMU and provides the 30-day deadline that we were talking about. Specifically, the ministerial notice noted a number of zones within the district in our CU, CD, PA, as well as RD zones, which should be amended to comply with SMU. And the highlighted ones here on this table are the ones that the province had added to the list, which were different from our previous proposed zoning bylaw amendments that was considered in May. In addition to this list, the minister also excluded RM1 zone, which was previously included, and therefore the new proposal would also doesn't include RM1 zone changes. So the proposed amendment bylaw before you, number 5351, seeks to amend zones as identified by the province to allow for densities as required, which is 3, 4, and 6 units, depending on the site size as well as the distance from the frequent transit network. We would permit ground-oriented dwellings to provide flexibility of housing options, including infill, multiplex, or town row homes, to allow for these densities to be realized for landowners. And we would also provide parking relaxation, which is zero parking for sites that are close to the FTN as required by the legislation. And the site standards, which are the FAR's setbacks as well as height, etc., would be consistent with the existing zoning, existing allowances within the zone. And we would also consider the provincial manual by providing yard exceptions for cases where landowners may want to develop fee simple row houses. Finally, we would maintain the existing legislative exemptions in accordance to the legislation, and that is where sites that are greater than 4,050 square meters, as well as sites that are not serviced by water and sewer, would be exempt from this legislation and therefore are not included within our zoning amendments. The analysis of the impacted zones include 381 parcels, and that is up from that is an addition of 166 parcels from the previous bylaw amendments across the entire district. The total sites that would actually see an increase in density is actually 313 parcels, and that is because about 70 parcels already has existing densities that either it meets the provincial requirements or actually is more than the provincial requirements. An example of this would be CD 47, which is Hollyburn Mews, and within which our CD zone allows for a maximum of 9 units for that one parcel, and the requirement is for 6. Therefore, even though we are changing the zone to allow for zero parking requirements, the densities actually don't increase. This map shows the locations for where the zones are, where the parcels would be impacted. And the pink ones really show the ones that are close enough to the FTN and would be required to have 6 units and no parking. And the orange would be those that are greater than 280 square meters, but far enough that they are required to meet 4 units. And finally, there is a number of very small sites that are under 280 square meters and are only required to meet 3 units. So for next step, staff proposes that Council set the date for readings and adoption where the legislation prohibits a public hearing, and therefore we could complete first, second, and third readings as well as adoption on the same date. Public notice, as mentioned, would be required for 2 weeks. The current proposal is the current recommendation is for August 19th, but of course, Council can reconsider that. However, if Council is able to amend or to consider the amendment zonings by August 24th, that would provide an opportunity to actually meet the provincial notice. And subsequent to any amendments, should Council adopt changes, the legislation also requires that staff or the district provide the amended zoning bylaws as well as the list of exempted sites to the province to comply. And the ministerial notice also noted that should the district fail to amend our zoning bylaw by the 30-day deadline, the minister has powers within Section 787 of the Local Government Act to enact and amend zoning bylaws as well as set site regulations to force compliance for SMOO. So staff recommend that the proposed zoning bylaw number 5351 be considered for readings and adoption at the date of August 19th, and that notice be given of the scheduled consideration. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Councillor Gambioli.
Thank you. And I'm hoping we can go back to that map. So while you figure that out, I just wanted to give a shout out to staff, especially Ms. Yip here, who I am pretty sure has spent the entire weekend and most of last week rushing to get this done and to create these maps. So thank you very much, and apologies for the craziness. So I just wanted to emphasize that that the number of lots we're talking about, and the reason I want to emphasize this is because we've received a number of emails after May 27th where my impression is that people are misled by, you know, the general nature of some of the media to think that every single lot is hereby going to be rezoned to, you know, have 6 units on it. But as everyone can see from this map, I believe that the total, at the May 27th meeting, the total number of lots that we were discussing was at 1.6% of all the lots. So that means that 98.4% of the lots are not changing. And now that the provincial government has been given reason to look a little closer, they've essentially doubled that number of lots, if I'm not mistaken. So that's, I guess, my question. We're now looking at about double the number, so let's say 3%.
Yeah, so the exact number through Mayor is 2.8%.
Okay, so 2.8% of the lots in our community are what we're discussing. So 97.2% of all the lots are not being affected or changed. So I just really wanted to confirm that. All right, we're talking about a very small number. And the reason these lots are being looked at in specificity is why?
Through the mayor, so the province defined what a restricted zone is, and it's fairly narrow. And so for the majority of single-family sites across the district, because we currently allow basement suite and a coach house, those sites are not considered a restricted zone, and so are not subject to the small-scale multi-unit housing requirements. So that explains at a high level why the zoning amendments are restricted to the minimum amount of sites as described by Ms. Yip.
So I'll summarize that in my own way by saying we're actually ahead of the curve because our last council created zoning so that there can be 3 units per lot on virtually every lot in the community, right? A main house, a suite, a basement suite, if you will, and a coach house. So we're actually ahead of the curve in terms of many, many municipalities. So we really have only a very small number, 2.8% of the total, to potentially change because they are near transit routes, right? And anything else? Why are these little ones being picked out is what my question is, I guess.
Yes, through the mayor. So there are, as you can see in the map, there are a number of sets of parcels that were in the restricted zone because they were historically land use contract sites, which then had in itself a set of contracts that restricted their use to specifically either to single family or single family with a secondary suite and didn't allow coach houses. So as Councillor Gambioli had mentioned earlier, when we subsequently made changes to the RS zones to allow for coach houses across all the different RS zones across the district, that didn't impact the land use contract sites, and therefore they were still restricted to just either 1 or 2 units, and therefore they were included as a restricted zone under the legislation and had to change.
Okay, thank you. All right, sorry, 2 more questions. One more question for planning staff and then one question for our legislative services staff. The neighborhood character guidelines that we have and all our sort of building guidelines, I'm just trying to imagine how a lot is going to be affected. All of a sudden, we have our guidelines, which have recently been created thanks to our committee or our working group that went on for almost 3 years, looking at better siting and more compatible with neighborhoods, et cetera. But it wasn't envisioning 4 or 5 or 6 units. So I'm just trying to get a handle on how our current building guidelines are going to be able to relate to this push for more densification, and are we going to have to create more sort of zoning character guidelines to deal with these new possibilities?
So through the mayor, so the zoning amendments that are included in the report, those don't, because we're altering existing zones, we're not creating new zones. They do keep, as Ms. Yip explained, they do keep the same site coverage, height, floor area ratio requirements within those zones. So essentially the envelope isn't changing, even though the unit allowance would be increasing to meet the provincial requirements. So the setback requirements and the height requirements and those kinds of things would stay the same. So that would allow for consistent size of buildings to what you see currently. If in future council wanted to introduce development permit guidelines for the ground-oriented housing, they could, but that couldn't happen at this time because that would require a public hearing, which is prohibited for the small-scale multi-unit housing zoning bylaw amendments.
Got it. Okay, so I guess we'll just have to trust the architects. We'll figure it out. All right, my last question then is, we found ourselves in a pretty unusual situation here, meeting at the end of July and in August. So I've never been part of a meeting that's had first, second, third reading and adoption at the same meeting. So just for the benefit of the public who might want to have some input into this topic, whatever date we choose for this first, second, third reading and adoption, can the public speak to the issue? Normally they can't speak at first reading. Apparently they're not able to speak today to this issue, but normally they do speak at second and third reading. So just trying to help the public understand.
Ms. Dallas, I think we've had a look at this legislation, and it appears there will be no ability to have a public hearing, and as my understanding, no ability to have public input. Is that your reading of it?
That's correct. The Local Government Act is clear that local governments are prohibited from holding a public hearing on this matter related to small-scale multi-use housing, and the legislation is not clear regarding public comment at a regular meeting. So the public can submit written comment, but we cannot receive verbal submissions. This planning may want to add to that.
Written comments. Okay, thank you.
Never in my life, in all of the years being involved in community and civic life, would I have imagined that someone would suggest that we can't have public input. Councillor Watt.
Yeah. I'm going to start by just throwing a couple of numbers out here. So the Lionsgate Bridge was built in 1937, and there were 267,000 people in Greater Vancouver. And when the Ironworkers was built in 1957, there were 600,000 people in Greater Vancouver. We have no more bridges, no more access. Today, we have 2.7 million people in Greater Vancouver, 4.5 times the population we had when the Ironworkers Bridge was built. And there is the expectation from this government that they can force municipalities to densify without them coming to the table, without offering any sort of solution. And to that point, TransLink has now announced that they are $600 million. They're going to have a $600 million deficit, and we have the potential of them slashing access to the North Shore by 50%. So, and I also believe Handy Dart, 35%, which will impact our seniors, and the CBUS at 30%. So with these looming potential cuts, I believe that BC United have pledged that they will bring a SkyTrain to the North Shore, but we have heard nothing from this government that is ramming this legislation through municipalities clear across the province. And I want to relay a conversation that I had at a UBCM housing summit with Minister Kowloon February of 2023. And during a break, I approached him and I just asked about the provincial government's decision to enforce housing in virtually every municipality across the province. And he looked at me a bit bewildered when I asked him, well, I pointed out we're not all the same. We are large communities, we are small communities, we are bound by bridges, tunnels, water, and all the rest of it. And I pointed out the fact that Squamish and the District of West Vancouver have grown significantly since 2021. I believe it's 3.5 million, or no, I can't. The amount of tourism, Whistler, they see, 3.5 million people, and ferries, 6 million people coming through. And he just stood there and looked at me, and then finally he asked if people in West Vancouver need to leave the North Shore very often. And I say this because for me, standing there looking at a senior member of government who is responsible for this bill, asking if the people of the North Shore need to leave very often, showed me that there was not a clear plan going forward. So
Thank you,
I
Councillor
struggle
Watt.
to support it.
Councillor Thompson, please.
Thank you. Actually, I wanted to comment on Mayor Sager's reference to the interview with Gloria Makarenko. And I'm just wondering, Ms. Dallas, would that be possible to post on our website for people to hear?
I could certainly coordinate with communications
Check.
on that.
Well, thank you. And I think this is important because I actually just listened to it before we walked through the doors today, and it was an excellent, comprehensive scope of why we feel we're doing our part in the community in a way that really works in our community, in a way we can manage, in a way that is sensitive to our neighborhoods. It is an excellent interview, and the comment of the minister to say that it's our job, that we should be doing our jobs, I believe we are. It's our role here on council to make decisions on land use, good decisions. And, he mentions the frustration of all the other municipalities to sit there and say, we're adopting it. Why isn't that one community not? But quite frankly, it's frustrating to me to see so many municipalities adopt this when it clearly doesn't work for them. And, we roll this back. I'm not sure if the public or even the media, for that matter, has really had the exposure and the depth of insights that we've had in various discussions. I'll roll back to our UBC Housing Summit that brought together all our municipalities to discuss what this looked like throughout BC. And there was not a lot of support for this. And at the very least, there was a lot of concern about infrastructure costs, about abilities of planning departments. In places like Nelson, BC, this is going to ruin the very charm and character of what brings people to our community. And, it's fascinating to see from all that feedback, virtually no amendments to these policies were made. And that's interesting, right? The government comes forward with a heavy-handed, broad-stroked policy for all the BC municipalities that are each unique and individual in their own right and need sensitive consideration for many of these projects, and no amendments were made. There was one panel, I believe the minister was on it, where the moderator said, put it into perspective, and she goes, the way government really works here is the feds have all the money, the province has all the power, and the municipalities have all the problems. And that is fundamentally how we integrate with each other. In my time in working with the province, with 6 different municipalities, when we were in government, our job was to go to the municipalities as a province, say, how can we help you? What do you need? What sort of funding, what sort of guidance, what sort of policies help you as a municipality to thrive? And this seems like a real reversal of, more downloading of responsibility and overreaching on telling us how to run our communities. So it's a fascinating time. Furthermore, we went on to an LMLGA, which is Lower Mainland Local Governments, where I believe 22 municipalities gather to talk about policies that we want to bring forward for provincial recommendation. And it's a very productive gathering and sharing of ideas. And these housing targets were, in a lot of question. But the most captivating part of that conference was, at the very end of it, we had veteran political reporters, Keith Baldry and Vaughn Palmer, speak. And I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they've been covering legislature for decades. And collectively between them, they had a tremendous walk through history in politics and legislature. And they relayed to us that it is not a healthy environment in our legislature right now, and made this comment that was remarkable, that the biggest problem is you've got three massive egos battling it out. And you got to wonder, when you have policy driven from a government that is battling it out for ego, is this really coming from a good place? So all that said, what I find is, when we debated this in May, I came at it from a purely practical reason, and the policy itself doesn't make sense to me. And I don't understand why more municipalities are not doing the same thing and saying, let us take care of it. We understand we need more housing. And the mayor's article really covers it all. It more than covers all the practical reasons I said, referring to the LAP that we have in place, Cypress Village, the various sensitive projects. We are doing our part. We're aware of what we need to do and doing what we can. So we're forced to go from making a practical decision based on good policy to a political one. Are we going to be compliant? Are we going to play chicken with the government and see who wins, which doesn't seem to be a really great way to make decisions. There's a big warning. Even our own West Van Cap MLA was at a public meeting, and instead of offering some insights of how we might navigate this, she basically said, I'm sorry, I worry about you guys. They're going to come after you with a big stick, and you know what this government's like. And I thought, what does that mean, really? We need to be constructive here. I just want to make a comment. Minister Collins' article in the North Shore News, made a few comments that I think are kind of amplified rhetoric. There's a lot of snap bites coming out of the government that seem to reflect that we're not taking this issue seriously. And he really points out that we're not meeting our targets or coming close. Well, quite frankly, when you see the list, nobody is, because no matter how much people are approving, it's not a building climate, and we're all trying. And West Van's no different than the other 10 to 20 municipalities that are on this. Nobody's met their targets. We're against housing and transit is a quote that came, and that's just not true. We are not against housing. And again, listen to that interview. The transit, I think he's referring to the Beeline option, which 6 years ago came to us, and it offered a bunch of articulated diesel buses without Wi-Fi running through our most well-serviced transit corridor, and did nothing for the western part and the northern part of our community, and the millions of people running through the community up Taylor Way and the highway. That is really the problem. It's not addressing the problem. Why would we adopt all these buses running through our community and not settle there and not address what is really going to get people in our community out of the cars? And so, I don't know where I'm going to land on the 19th or whenever we get together to discuss this, because I'm torn. Some of our community is concerned that they're just going to come in and overreach our ability to govern our community. But I would like to make a plea to the government to say, give us a year. Let us show you the decisions we can make, the things we have in place. We've got the Taylorway corridor coming in. Park Royal is on cue to do something extraordinary there. The population growth you're going to see here, and as mentioned in this great interview, the population growth all around us at the Sea to Sky corridor is just impacting us in such an all-consuming way. We need to consider it all. And we just need ability to manage growth in our community in a way that's meaningful to us.
Thank you. Councillor Gambioli.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm going to agree with some things that my colleagues have said, but not with all of it. So first of all, I just want to be very clear that although the vote on May 27th was unanimous because there were 6 people here who
We
all
missed you that
voted
day,
it,
Councillor Gambioli.
then
You were away.
I wasn't here. I was away overseas, and I requested that we put off the vote because I wasn't going to be here, but the rest of my council wasn't sympathetic, so they went ahead without me, and hence the vote was unanimous. However, I will tell you now that if I had been here, the vote would not have been unanimous. I would have voted in favor, and not that that would have made a whole lot of difference because we would still be here together now in the middle of the summer. You know, I agree that West Vancouver is unique, and I suspect most municipal councillors feel the same way about their municipality. And we certainly have a beautiful place to live, and we are very blessed to live here. But I don't really think we're that special in the housing arena. And I agree that it's been a broad brush in terms of this legislation for all municipalities. But we're really in the same boat as North Van District, I'm going to suggest, with traffic, with geography, and they're doing it. And they're in compliance. And I think we need to do our part for housing, and we need to comply with this province's efforts to create more housing. And I will say that I've been a part of this gig for 12 years, and for the entire 12 years, we have not done enough for housing. We have not created enough workforce housing, and we have approved things here and there, but it's been very sporadic, and I agree, some of it's not up to us, as Councillor Snyder pointed out. The market is what it is, but it's the same in every municipality. So that's not our, you know, that can't be our excuse. And, you know, we, as a municipality, we are creatures of the province. So the province creates us. We have, you know, we are constituted by the province. We are given our jurisdiction by the province. We are fees that we can charge for ticketing and things like that are set by the province, or they're maximized by the province. Procedures, things like public hearings, you know, everything is controlled really by the province. So now this is another example of the fact that the province is going a certain way with their policy, and they're asking us to comply. So our choice is to consider this zoning or to have the province do it for us. And doing it for us, according to the letter we received, includes citing, size, location, and type of housing units required to be permitted. I personally would much rather have us do it according to our own zoning and guidelines than have the province decide all of that for us. And I believe they will. And what I think is interesting is that the owners of some of those properties that you saw earlier on the map, the very small number of properties, I might add, the 1.6% from May, are actually finally waking up and realizing, oh, my property could be zoned for more units and therefore perhaps more valuable. And maybe I might want to develop that myself someday. And they're starting to write to us and to contact us and to say, why didn't you pass that legislation in May? Of course, my answer is, well, I wasn't here. But I think that's important to recognize, is that it's a very small number of lots, but perhaps those people who own those lots should be telling us their point of view, because we've heard from a lot of other external entities and residents, but we're starting now to hear from those people who have realized what's going on. So I actually appreciate that the province has sent us this ultimatum, and I think in the long term it's going to be better for our community, and I will support moving to considering the zoning bylaw on August 19th.
Thank you, Councillor Gambioli. Councillor Cassidy.
Thank you. So when you refer to 313 parcels, in essence, you're referring to 313 lots.
Ms. Yip? Or, sorry, Ms. McGuire?
Through the Mayor, yes, parcels and lots are equivalent in our zoning bylaw.
Okay, thank you. So, and you're looking at a particular neighborhood. Essentially, you're looking at Ambleside, Dunderave, for these 313 parcels.
Through the Mayor, the 313 parcels would cover the entire, it's account for the entire district. So there are some sites such as CD80 that is currently, just above the highway on the eastern edge of West Vancouver. That is an LUC site that currently allows for 8 units on that parcel, but 8 units on 1 per strata lot. And the provincial legislation would require it to go to 3 per strata lot.
Okay, but the majority of them would be down in the Ambleside, Dunderave area.
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you. So where I stand in this, well, I'm not somebody who likes to be dictated to, period. That is just my nature, but too bad, so sad for my nature. I have to keep an open mind as to the circumstances involving this position. But the truth of the matter is, I have absolutely singularly no confidence whatsoever that this government is going to be able to build ourselves out of this problem. Because whether it's this government or its predecessors, they created this problem. When we had foreign buyers coming over here by the plane load and the bus load in the 1990s and buying up 8 and 10 houses, leaving them empty. We've talked about the empty housing problem that we have, not just in West Vancouver, but in the Lower Mainland. The government did nothing about it. When people were using casinos and real estate to launder their illegal money, the government did virtually nothing about it. There's a wonderful book on this subject called Willful Blindness. When we began the problem in the downtown east side with all of those individuals living on the streets, you can thank the government of the day that closed Riverview and Essendale and sent people with mental health problems onto the streets and expected that they were going to survive. So now we are being dictated to a government which is a socialist government. It is a form of socialism, and that's now, quite frankly, bordering on communism. They created this problem. They take an inordinate amount of money out of West Vancouver in the school tax, and they don't give us anything back. For years, we have been asking for a bridge. A lot of people don't come to this community because of that bridge. We have one hospital. And the more people we put in that hospital, in this community, that is where they're going to go. So it's not even so much the 313 parcels. It's at the end of the day, it's not going to resolve the problem. The problem is the unprecedented immigration that is beginning to come into this country, and those individuals need to be housed. So the problem is just going to continue. And I don't know how I'm going to lay the land on this, but I take great exception to the fact of West Vancouver being deemed in the media to be a privileged community of rich people. We are a privileged people. We are very privileged. We are privileged to live in an inordinately gorgeous piece of Mother Nature, the mountains and the water. But most of the people here, at least 80 to 90% of the people who live in this community, came in with virtually nothing and made their way up. So just to give you an example, the median income in West Vancouver in Ambleside is $62,400 before tax. The median income in Central Lonsdale before tax is $70,000. The median income in, where shall we go? Let me pick another community. Let me pick Pitt Meadows, all right? Nobody would call Pitt Meadows a privileged community, gorgeous community, but not privileged in the media. Their median income is $104,000. Where else shall we pick? Oh, let's pick Richmond South. Their median income is $91,000. So we are not a wealthy community. We have progressively discussed at this table and amongst ourselves elsewhere as we proceed to develop that our big problem is we have an aging population. We need that middle income, which today I don't know how we define middle income. Is it a housing type or is it people? So we are an aging population of people living on a pension. So all of this publicity and all of this boo-hoo going on by the NDP government, I'm not buying. And as I said, the problem we have today in this community, in this province, and in this country is all been, I'm not dictating to you, woman, so don't fuss about that, I'm on your side, is all government created. And they think, honest to God, they're going to build their way out of it. What they're going to do is they're going to ruin what we have, what makes this lower mainland, which makes this province great, which makes this country great. So that's where I stand, and I don't appreciate being dictated to by a government. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cassidy. Councillor Watt.
Actually, I can see Councillor Lambert has his hand up.
Oh,
so
sorry,
maybe we
Councillor
should-
Lambert. I apologize.
No problem. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It seems that there's been a good discussion here. It seems we're straying a little bit from the subject matter of the motion, and I was wondering respectfully if we could come back to the motion. And it seems to me that there was an appetite for a friendly amendment to extend that date for the next meeting so that all members of council could attend the meeting. Is anyone
Thank you,
prepared
Councillor.
to-
That is quite correct. This is simply to set a date, and we can continue this discussion. The challenge I'm having is I think setting a date in August is just wrong, period. And I don't know where that takes us. We write to the minister and say, you know, we hold it at our first regular council meeting in September. I would prefer September 16th. I just fundamentally, but of course, if we can't even allow public input, the whole process just doesn't feel right to me at all. Councillor Thompson?
Yeah, I think we need to work out a date for sure. I actually just had one question, and unfortunately, I think the person who can answer it isn't here. And when we were discussing applying this bill to all of our single-family dwellings, there was an understanding that through a mill rate, we'd be able to adjust our tax rate. So it wouldn't be such a big leap going from a single-family dwelling to a possibility of 4 to 6 units. And my concern, although, is especially out in the West, where a lot of these parcels are very unique pieces of land and may not even be developable. They're literally, I know some of them are cliffs and little houses hanging on the cliffs. Can we find out what happens if we just put these 300 plus parcels into it? How that affects their taxes if they don't develop and continue to live in a single family dwelling with the ability to build 4 or 6 units?
Thank you. Ms. McGuire.
Through the mayor to Councillor Thompson, we could bring information back if council does set the date and consult with financial Isabel to find out what the answer to that question is. I don't know it here right now, but we can definitely bring information back, any information that council requests at the time of consideration.
Yeah,
happy to do that.
Thank you. And I just wanted to clarify with Councillor Cassidy about our contribution from the school tax. And when the additional school tax was first put in, we started contributing $54 million into the provincial coffers. And last year, I believe it was $85 million from our community alone that goes in through our school taxes.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Thompson. And just imagine if we had even a part of those funds to do some of the many things we would love to see happen in our own community. Councillor Watt.
I want to add that the school tax is not a school tax, it's a general revenue tax, and we sought clarification, and I believe we received a letter from Victoria saying that it is not essentially a school tax. So it is interesting, and I believe that letter said that some of that tax was to go toward affordable housing, but we don't receive any of that money back. So that is interesting. And I just also wanted to add, this is about 2.8% of our properties. It's not a lot. It is the principle, as Councillor Cassidy has pointed out, and I feel that way as well. And the other thing is we are being painted by some in the media and on social media as having an elitist attitude about this. We were way ahead of the curve in allowing coach houses and basement suites on the vast majority of our properties. So that is definitely misinformation. And finally, I just wanted to add that we here in West Vancouver, across the Lower Mainland and the province, are no different than across the country. Housing starts are tumbling. Ontario is in real trouble. They were supposed to be increasing, I believe, by 150,000 a year, and their numbers have actually come down. So I'm not quite sure how ramming this legislation through, as they are doing, is going to have any impact.
Thank you, Councillor Watt. I would just note that despite what the minister said, I know that the township of Langley was given a 90-day extension to consider this. It would seem only reasonable to me that we could write the minister and suggest that council, if council was to vote in favor of putting this for consideration to September 16th, simply advise the minister that that's the first opportunity we have when we're certain all members of council can be present. Councillor Gambioli?
Yeah, in the meantime, I'm just hoping that maybe staff could add to their report, which is part of the public agenda, with the maps that you've created, because your maps are not in the report for the public, and I think it's really, really important for people to see exactly where these spots are. I mean, I'm just looking at these maps now and realizing a whole bunch of things. Anyway, so maybe somehow you could add those to the public record or to the report.
Through the mayor, Councillor Gambioli, we'd be happy to do that. We did produce the maps after the agenda had been posted.
Over the weekend, I know. I'm sorry.
We'd be happy to add them to the webpage.
Sorry.
Mayor Sager, I just
Yes.
wanted to update yourself and council that through communications, we were able to secure a date with the North Shore News should council wish to change the date of consideration. We could get the ad in the July 31st and August 7th editions. And so that would mean that council could hold its special meeting the week of August 12th to 16th.
Sorry, we've still... You know, honestly, I think as soon as I received the letter on behalf of our community, I called this meeting. We have all members of council present. We've taken the letter seriously. We're looking at a date, And dear Mr. Minister, here are the steps we are doing to comply with your demands, your request, however we wish to phrase it. And the first opportunity we have to have all members of council present is September 16th. Councillor Cassidy.
So it's not that any of us are actually being difficult and trying to miss meetings, but the fact is that the month of August is the month that council is in recess, and that is when the majority of council members would have made their holiday plans, and probably well in advance. So it is unfortunate that he has chosen this timeline, whether it was purposeful or whether it's not, but in there should be reconsideration to a somewhat later date. It's not that we're endeavoring to be defiant, it is just, it is not working for the democratic process of people being given the opportunity to take a vacation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cassidy. Would the mover and seconder consider an amendment to set the date for September 16th at 7 p.m.?
To the mayor, yes, that I'd certainly consider that as a friendly amendment. I would like to note, however, that the suggestion of a later date in September might be more useful in the sense that those members of the public who might wish to weigh in on this informally, notwithstanding there isn't a public hearing process, but communicate their concerns to members of council, that if it was held in September, there would be an opportunity to do that outside of the summer holiday season. So it's just something to consider. But I'd certainly consider either of those dates as a friendly amendment.
The 16th is the first day that I know all members of council can be present. And I think every member of council has...
Sorry, September 16th is UBCM.
Oh.
So the 23rd.
September 23rd is the first day that all members of council can be present for proper consideration of this matter. September 23rd.
And what's wrong with August 12th?
It's, we've got two members of council not able to be here.
You can't call in?
From the road somewhere, maybe. We won't be driving. So
I think that concession fee.
So it'll be a travel day, not ideal.
Might be a question of whether or not I have coverage on that.
Yeah.
I do think it's really appropriate for something like this that all members of council have an opportunity to vote. And I'm sorry, Councillor Gambiola, I didn't actually think about the earlier vote and whether or not, I thought you actually were invited to Zoom in on that day.
No.
But we can talk about it.
That's all right, you can watch the video, it's fine.
Okay. Well, sorry, I really would prefer to not exclude members of council.
So we agree on the 23rd?
I would agree with the 23rd.
Okay, we have a mover and a, Councillor Lambert, sorry, I think you made the motion, so the friendly amendment is to September 23rd. I would write to the minister and tell him we had an immediate meeting to consider his letter, and that is the first opportunity all members of council are able to participate, and that our staff did bring forward bylaws which would comply with your demand.
That's acceptable.
I guess the question would be whether that's not really acceptable.
I guess I'll call you again. Councillor Gambiola?
Just a question about the notification. So the rule is it has to be 2 weeks of notification? 2 separate weeks. So our weeks would be the 31st and the 7th. What is wrong with having a meeting on the 8th or the 9th? Do we still have people away?
Yeah.
Yes, we do, actually.
Okay. All right, just wanting to make sure.
So the mover and seconder have agreed to a friendly amendment to set the date for September 23rd at 7 p.m. in the council chamber. If there's no further discussion, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Contrary? The motion is carried. And I will write to the minister, and if we hear otherwise, I will inform you immediately. A couple of other items. Item number 4, discussion of reinstatement of the 29th Street staircase, and this is simply a motion to ask staff to come forward with a cost estimate that was discussed at some length at our lengthy council meeting last week. Could I ask someone to make that motion? Moved by Councillor Snyder, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Any discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor? Contrary, the motion is carried.
Contrary over here.
Okay.
I think that we need it.
Okay, Councillor Gambioli is contrary. And are there any public comments or questions this evening before we adjourn? There is one.
Lucinda Jones has signed up to speak.
Ms. Jones, nice to see you today. Are you going to bring some lighthearted, nice comments for us today after that heavy debate and discussion?
Yeah, full of positivity. So I just wanted to express my appreciation to each and every one of you, to the exhaustive efforts of the district, mayor and council, and the citizens, to the health and integrity, especially to the ecology of our overall community, as required and encouraged by the province, found in the years-long making of policies and bylaws such as the Urban Forest Management Plan and the Integrated Storm Management Plan. These protective bylaws were diligently and carefully created for myriad reasons, those being the populace of the entire region, each and every one of us. We breathe in the air of these trees, and it makes the whole province, especially the Lower Mainland here, a really fine place to live. We contribute a lot through our trees, to the overall ecology. And so we all know it's actually hazardous to undervalue those natural assets. To diminish our urban canopy is hazardous to the integrity of the landscape as well as to the livability of this region. And so I just want to say thank you.
Well, Ms. Jones, thanks for those nice comments before we take our summer recess.
Thank
you. Seeing no other comments, I'll call the question, or I'll ask for a motion for adjournment. Councillor Snyder, seconded by Councillor Watt. All those in favor? Contrary, carried. I do hope everyone enjoys the month of August. And who knows, maybe we'll be seeing you again this month, but maybe it'll be September. Thank you.